So welcome to a new series of All Things Conflict with, surprise, surprise, me, your host, Maria Arper. This series I've called Justice Redesigned. When we run businesses, we know that there are going to be unpredictable disruptions and threats and challenges to running any business. And what do we do in the face of those challenges and disruptions? Do we ignore, do we avoid, or do we sort of just run away from it? In my time working with businesses and senior leadership teams, what I've discovered is actually the biggest threat to progress and growth and development is often the internal conflict and the internal tensions and the poor communication between team members or even in the boardroom. Internal conflict on its own is harmful enough. And when you combine that with external threats and pressures, it becomes a real existential threat to a business. So once a year, I open up an annual dialogue roadmap training specifically to help people in leadership positions develop the skills of conflict resolution, dialogue, compassionate communication in order to be able to handle these kinds of disruptions with elegance, with grace and with precision. Anybody in a line management or leadership position needs these skills as second nature, as something that you develop and that you can walk into any situation and know exactly what to say, how to handle it, and be a safe container for all the people around you that are relying on you or depending on you. So if you want to know more about this training, and it's only once a year and it is limited, click the link on the show notes below the episode if you're listening on audio. And if you're watching this on video, just click on the link below in the episode description. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I'd be more than happy to open a conversation if you think this might be for you. Thank you. Justice is such an important human need. Fairness, justice, equality, respect, all of those human needs that we really notice it when those things are not in play. There's no end of media and news and politicians and people talking about how all our systems are broken and that nothing's working and nothing's good enough anymore. In many ways, that's true, but it is a really, really complex world that we're living in. I don't think things have ever been so complicated, and I've been on the planet a few years. So I've spent the last 30 years working in social impact, social justice, the justice system, working with, ordinary people who are struggling, people who feel they don't have a voice, people who feel that poverty is becoming worse. And it actually isn't the case that nothing works. I think things are really complicated. I think there are lots of people trying to do the best they can. And then there are some catastrophic failures. I mean, in this series, we will talk about some of the things that have gone wrong, like, the post office, like Windrush, like Grenfell, all sorts of things where things go catastrophically wrong. And we will dive into those things and why they go wrong. So to give you a flavour of the kinds of guests that we'll be inviting on to All Things Conflict, I've got a couple of people with lived experience of the criminal justice system. People who've, experienced it firsthand and can really speak to some of the issues and things that need to be resolved. I've also got some people coming on who are really into rehabilitation. And what does rehabilitation mean? And what have we got to give? What do we do to reintegrate people into society after, they've been either imprisoned or publicly shamed or have been excluded from society. And there's real work on the ground being done. And also some people in the legal profession, because, nothing happens without good lawyers when we're in the arena of the law, and justice is very much enshrined in the law, or perhaps injustice, as some people might say. And we've also got someone who had, directly impacted by the Windrush issue, who's gone on to, look at the shadow in organisations and why things then, sort of go wrong, or why things, people do cover-ups and all that kind of stuff. And then looking at redevelopment in communities and what do communities need to do to pull together to reduce their reliance on government to provide what it just simply is demonstrating to us that it cannot provide. So I hope you'll find these discussions really interesting, get something out of it, maybe even feel motivated or inspired to find out more, or to want to see how you can do your bit without sort of sacrificing yourself. What are you doing? What are we all doing? How are we pulling together in society to get past these complexities and these complications, which it doesn't help if we're fighting over them. It simply doesn't help us to fight over them. But actually, you can find as many negative, podcasts, negative stuff out there telling us, how it's all wrong. And I thought, actually, wouldn't it be interesting to hear from people that are actually making a difference on the ground, people that are actually risking themselves or putting themselves out there to work in the justice system, to work with young people, to work with our communities, our schools, to see what actually is being done. Because the truth is, no matter what the promises are made, the government isn't going to be able to do this on their own, And so, we hear a lot from politicians and from journalists, and those opinions are all to be valued and listened to and honoured. But actually, I really want us to hear from the people doing the work on the ground. So welcome to this series. I hope you enjoy it. I hope there's some richness in these conversations, and let's dive into Justice Redesigned.